meets aristocratic altercation alive on television? Today, we're diving into one of the best atomic moments in daytime TV history. Angelina Jolie delivered a masterclass in adroitness under pressure, while actually dismantling Meghan Markle's anxiously crafted narrative. The restriction was so blubbery you could cut it with a knife. And by the end, one bedfellow was larboard aghast while the added acceptable a continuing ovation. Make a biting to subscribe and beat a comment beneath, because this adventure will leave you analytic aggregate you thought you knew about celebrity interviews. The actualization flat bashed with anticipation as the show's iconic theme music faded. Whoopi Goldberg sat center stage belted by Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, Alyssa Farah Griffin, and Sunny host. The activity was different today. Electric about as if everyone could faculty article big was about to unfold. Ladies and gentlemen, Whoopi began. Her articulation accustomed that familiar authority. We accept two absolute special guests abutting us today. First, please welcome actress, director, and humanitarian Angelina Jolie. The audience erupted as Angelina absolved onto the stage, her attendance commanding immediate respect. She confused with that effortless breeding that had captivated audiences for decades. Warm waves to the army afford demography her seat on the acclaimed couch. And our second guest, Whoopi continued. The Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle. Meghan emerged from backstage, her smile ablaze but somehow calculated. She'd clearly prepared for this moment, her outfit perfectly chosen, her beard immaculately styled. But there was article in her eyes, a ache perhaps, that suggested she had a calendar above simple promotion. As both women acclimatized into their seats, the adverse was immediately apparent. Angelina sat naturally, actually present in the moment, while Meghan seemed to be performing alike in stillness. Her posture perfect, her easily positioned just so. So admirable to accept you both here. Joy Behar jumped in, her trademark enthusiasm on abounding display. Angelina, your actuality announcement, your new film about refugee advocacy. And Meghan, you're discussing your accessible Netflix documentary series. Two absolute different projects, but both absorption on important social issues. Angelina nodded graciously. Acknowledge you for accepting me. Yes, this blur is article absolute close to my heart. I've spent years working with refugees about the world, and I wanted to actualize article that would give articulation to their stories, their resilience. That's beautiful, Sarah Haynes interjected. Your assignment with the UN has been so impactful over the years. I've been advantaged to witness incredible backbone in the most challenging circumstances, Angelina replied. These are bodies who've lost everything, but debris to lose hope. They've accomplished me added about courage than any role I've any time played. Meghan, who had been cat and mouse for her moment, leaned advanced slightly. I completely understand that affection for humanitarian work. My own adventure has opened my eyes to so abounding injustices, particularly around brainy bloom and women's empowerment. Sometimes I anticipate people don't apprehend how isolating it can be when you're aggravating to use your platform for change, but adverse constant criticism. There it was. Alike in what should accept been Angelina's moment, Meghan had somehow redirected the conversation to her own struggles. The panel exchanged quick glances, and viewers at home could about feel the about-face and energy. Sunny host, ever the accomplished interviewer, approved to navigate diplomatically. Both of your platforms actually brought attention to important causes. Meghan, tell us about your Netflix series. Well, Meghan began clearing a back with visible satisfaction. It's actually about authenticity and breaking chargeless from systems that try to blackout you. I think so abounding women, abnormally women of color, can chronicle to activity trapped by institutions that smile at you publicly but attenuate you privately. The statement afraid in the air. Anybody knew exactly what academy she was referencing, and the association was clear. This wasn't aloof promotion. This was an affected attack. Alyssa Farah Griffin, cartoon on her political background, accustomed the moment for what it was. That's actually a powerful theme. Angelina, in your humanitarian work, except you encountered similar institutional challenges? Angelina's response was measured. Thoughtful. I've learned that absolute change happens when you focus on the assignment itself rather than the obstacles. You're genuinely committed to a cause. Acquisition means to serve behindhand of the circumstances. The bodies I assignment with, refugees who fled war zones, they don't accept the luxury of institutional support. They create their own networks of resilience. It was a attenuate but a secular response. Without an on-adjoin Meghan, Angelina had accent the difference between 18-karat account and self-serving narratives. Meghan's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course, but I anticipate it's important to acknowledge that some of us had to fight battles on assorted fronts. When you're consistently accepting your character assassinated in The Columnist while trying to do acceptable work, it takes a toll. Character assassination is a strong term, Joy Behar noted. Her journalist instincts blame in. Are you referring to specific incidents? I'm apropos to a pattern, Meghan replied, her voice taking on that convenance accent she used in austere interviews. A arrangement of systematic abrasive that goes beyond normal media scrutiny. You're trying to improve age-old institutions while additionally angry ancestral bias. The push-back can be overwhelming. The audience was actually bashful now, hanging on every word. This was clearly building to article bigger. Whoopi, sensing the tension, approved to steer things back on track. Let's allocution about your accepted projects. Angelina, your film premieres a budding month, correct? Yes, and I'm acquisitive it will animate people to abutment refugee resettlement programs in their own communities. Angelina answered, real change happens at the grassroots back accustomed people decide to get involved. Again, there was that attenuate accent on activity over complaint, account over self-promotion. Meghan was alpha to attending less comfortable, acumen that her usual narrative techniques weren't landing the way they about did. Meghan confused in her seat, acutely balked that her attempts to centermost the conversation around her own victimhood weren't gaining the accord she expected. The View console was accomplished abundant to recognize a bedfellow was blame and agenda, and Angelina's attendance seemed to highlight aloof how affected Meghan's approach actually was. You apperceive what? Meghan said, her articulation demography on a sharper edge. I anticipate it's accessible for some bodies to allocution about grassroots change they haven't had to deal with the affectionate of institutional racism and analytical silencing that I've faced. Not anybody has had the privilege of actuality universally beloved by the media. The animate version was clearly directed at Angelina, and the flat fell completely. Silent. This was unprecedented area for The View. A direct battle amid two high-profile guests. Angelina's expression charcoal serene, but there was steel in her eyes now. I'm sorry. Are you suggesting that my altruistic work has been accessible because of media treatment? I'm suggesting that some of us had to action harder for our voices to be heard, Meghan replied, doubling down. You're ambidextrous with Palace Sources Conference adjoin you, tabloids age your every word, and family associates abnegation to avert you. It's a altered affectionate of challenge. Sarah Haynes looked genuinely uncomfortable now. Meghan, those are some serious allegations about your time in the aristocratic family. They're not allegations, they're facts, Meghan stated firmly. And I anticipate it's important that people accept the aberration between someone who gets to accept their humanitarian causes adjoin addition, who was silenced aggravating to allege up about brainy health, about racism, about basic animal dignity. The allegation was clear. Meghan was implying that Angelina's decades of altruistic work were somehow beneath elusive because she hadn't faced the aforementioned personal struggles. Whoopi Goldberg, who had moderated endless acrimonious discussions, could see this was ambiguous beyond normal account territory. Ladies, let's booty a footfall back here. But Angelina captivated up a affable hand. No, it's all right, Whoopi. I anticipate this is an important conversation. She angry to face Meghan directly, her articulation calm but firm. I've spent 20 years alive in refugee camps, war zones, and areas affected by accustomed disasters. I've held dying accouchement in my arms. I've sat with mothers who've watched their families torn afar by violence. I've been threatened. I've been criticized. I've been alleged aggregate from a home record to a publicity seeker. The studio was asleep bashful now. Alike the camera operator seemed to angular in. But never once, Angelina continued, except I fabricated my personal struggles the centermost of the story discussing the adversity of others. The refugees I assignment with, they don't accept Netflix deals to acquaint their stories. They don't accept media platforms or aristocratic titles or the adeptness to sit on television and appeal sympathy. They have annihilation but their animation and their achievement that addition will advise them rebuild their lives. Meghan's face had gone pale. This wasn't the response she'd expected. I anticipate your misunderstanding. Meghan approved to recover. I never said your assignment wasn't important. I'm artlessly pointing out that different bodies face different obstacles, and some of us had to overcome added barriers. Additional barriers? Angelina afresh slowly. You mean like the barrier of actuality built into a war zone? The barrier of watching your village bake down. The barrier of walking hundreds of afar with small children to adeptness a refugee affected where you might, if you're lucky, get one meal a day. Joy Behar, who rarely found herself speechless, was watching this exchange with accessible fascination. This wasn't aloof a disagreement. This was a masterclass in perspective. That's not what I meant, Meghan said, her voice becoming defensive. Obviously, those situations are tragic, but I'm talking about institutional racism within powerful families, about actuality gaslit and isolated. You were isolated, Angelina said, her accent remaining remarkably calm in Alcazar with a staff of hundreds with admission to the best health care, education, and assets in the Apple with a belvedere that reaches millions of bodies globally. Sunany host approved to intervene. I anticipate what Meghan is aggravating to accurate is that even with privilege, there can be unique challenges accompanying to chase and family dynamics. Of course, there can be. Angelina agreed immediately. And those challenges are absolute and they matter. But when you're sitting on national television talking about humanitarian work, maybe the focus should be on the people who actually charge advice rather than on how adamantine it's been for you to help them. The animadversion landed like a thunderbolt. Meghan's aperture opened slightly, as if she couldn't quite believe what she aloof heard. I can't believe you aloof said that, Meghan finally managed. You accept no abstraction what I've been through. You accept no abstraction what it's like to accept an absolute institution turn to join you, to accept your own family participate in apply campaigns, to be apprenticed to thoughts of suicide because of the pressure. You're absolutely right, Angelina replied without missing a beat. I don't know what that's like, but I do apperceive what it's like to appointment a refugee affected where mothers are so angular they can't produce milk for their babies. I know what it's like to accommodated boyish girls who've been awash into trafficking. I know what it's like to assignment with survivors of genocide who still death watch up screaming every night. The comparison was adverse in its simplicity. Alyssa Farah Griffin, cartoon on her years in politics, accustomed to defining moment aback she saw one. Angelina, how do you advance focus on the assignment when dealing with claimed challenges? You remember why you started, Angelina answered, her boring still anchored on Meghan. You bethink that your claimed pain, no matter how real, doesn't analyze to the suffering of bodies who accept no voice, no platform, no resources. You use whatever advantage you have, whatever platform you've been accustomed to serve others rather than to serve yourself. Meghan's face was ablaze now, her carefully complete composure completely shattered. So, you're saying that my affliction doesn't matter? That speaking out about racism and mental health struggles is selfish? I'm saying that aback you're discussing humanitarian work. The focus should be on the people you're aggravating to help, not on how hard it's been for you to advise them, Angelina replied evenly. I'm saying that absolute account requires putting other people's needs afore your own narrative. The admirers was completely captivated. This wasn't aloof drama. This was abstruse aberration in worldview being played out in absolute time. Whoopi tried already added to accomplish control. Ladies, I anticipate we're all passionate about important causes here. But Meghan wasn't finished. I anticipate it's incredibly privileged to advance that someone shouldn't allege about their own struggles aback those struggles are directly accompanying to their adeptness to help others. My adventure affairs because it shows added women, abnormally women of color, that they don't accept to stay silent in the face of injustice. Your story actually matters, Angelina agreed, hasty everyone. But so do the belief of the bodies you affirmation to be helping. And appropriate now in this conversation about altruistic work, we've spent 15 account talking about your claimed grievances and approximately 2 account talking about the absolute bodies who charge help. The observation hit like a altogether aimed arrow. Meghan sat there, aperture hardly agape, as the accuracy of Angelina's words settled over the flat like a heavy blanket. Alike the acclimatized actualization panel seemed abashed by the attention of the critique. That's not fair, Meghan finally stammered, her articulation defective its usual assured cadence. You're trying to accomplish it assume like I don't affliction about the bodies I'm aggravating to help. Am I? Angelina asked quietly. Because in the 20 account we've been sitting here, you've mentioned your own struggles approximately 15 times, and the people your documentary is declared to help exactly twice. Already in casual, and wants to explain how their belief chronicle to your own experience. Sarah Haynes looked down at her notes, acutely fact-checking Angelina's ascertainment in absolute time. Her slight, not appropriate, the calculation was accurate. I anticipate ambience matters, Meghan said, her articulation assent slightly. People need to accept the obstacles I faced in adjustment to acknowledge the assignment I'm doing now. Do they? Angelina countered, leaning advanced slightly. Aback, I accomplish a film about refugees. Do I absorb the majority of the account talking about how difficult it was for me to get financing? Do I alticate how exhausting the biking was, or how the media criticized my motives? Or do I talk about the absurd bodies I met and the burning charge for support? The panel exchanged glances. They all knew the answer. In endless interviews over the years, Angelina had consistently centered the bodies she was aggravating to help rather than her own journey. That's different, Meghan insisted, but her argument was accident steam. You don't understand the different pressures of being in the aristocratic family. You're absolutely right. I don't, Angelina agreed readily. But you apperceive what? I do accept the pressure of actuality, a distinct mother trying to assure your accouchement while working in alarming locations. The burden of being consistently scrutinized for every relationship, every adoption, every parenting best I've any time made. The pressure of accepting my brainy health questioned, my motives analyzed, my entire activity dissected in the tabloids for over 2 decades. The flat was completely bashful now. Alike Whoopi seemed afraid to interrupt. But here's the difference, Angelina continued, her voice abiding and clear. I abstruse early on that my claimed struggles, no matter how absolute or how painful, are not the story. Aback, I'm advocating for people who are actually angry for survival. The adventure is them. Always them. Meghan's face was now visibly flushed, her composure actually abandoned. So, you think I should aloof break bashful about institutional racism, about the mental health crisis I experienced? I think, Angelina said, pausing deliberately, that there's a time and abode for personal testimony, and there's a time and abode for affectionate advocacy, and I think accurate advocates apperceive the difference. Joy Behar, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. Angelina, that's a pretty strong statement. Are you adage that personal acquaintance can acquaint advocacy work? Not at all, Angelina replied immediately. Claimed experience absolutely should acquaint advocacy. But the catechism is whether you're using your acquaintance to serve others, or whether your application others' adversity to serve your own narrative. The comment was adverse in its clarity. Meghan looked as if she'd been physically struck. I can't accept this, Meghan said, her articulation afraid now. I came here to allocution about important social issues, and instead I'm actuality attacked for administration, my own adventure of overcoming adversity. No one's advancing you, Sunany host said gently, aggravating to diffuse the situation. I anticipate this is just an absolute amorous altercation about different approaches to advocacy. But Angelina wasn't finished. Meghan, can you tell us appropriate now after mentioning your own acquaintance why bodies should care about your Netflix documentary? What specific issues does it address? And how does it advise the communities you're claiming to serve? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Meghan opened her mouth, a fresh bankrupted, then opened it again. It's about empowering women to allege their accuracy in the face of institutional oppression, she assuredly managed. Which institutions? Angelina pressed. What specific forms of oppression? What communities are being helped? What assets are being provided? What accessible outcomes are you acquisitive to achieve? With each question, Meghan seemed to compress further into her seat. It was acceptable, painfully obvious that her activity was added about her own adventure than about allowance others. I don't anticipate I should accept to avert my humanitarian efforts to addition who's trying to abbreviate my experiences, Meghan said, her articulation demography on a petulant accent that was actually at odds with her accepted polished presentation. I'm not aspersing your experiences, Angelina replied calmly. I'm allurement you to analyze between sharing your adventures to advise others and administration added struggles to validate your own experiences. The distinction was so clear, so altogether articulated that alike Meghan seemed to understand she'd been actually outmaneuvered. Alyssa Farah Griffin, acquainted a teaching moment, addressed the audience directly. I anticipate what we're witnessing here is an actually important conversation about the aberration amid advocacy and autobiography. Exactly, Angelina said, access to face the camera. Aback we accept platforms, when we accept privilege, aback we have resources, we accept a choice. We can use those ability to amplify choir that would otherwise go unheard, or we can use other people's struggles to amplify our own voices. Meghan sat in stunned silence, acutely acumen that everything she'd said had been turned against her with surgical precision. Whoopee, analysis that this had reached its accustomed conclusion, approved to wrap up. Well, this has actually been an enlightening altercation about the responsibilities that appear with public platform. It has, Angelina agreed. Then turned on to Meghan one final time. An achievement that your documentary succeeds in allowance the bodies it's supposed to serve because at the end of the day, that's what actually matters. The comment was accommodating on the surface, but carried an apparent challenge. Meghan managed an anemic smile and a barely audible acknowledge you, but it was clear she'd been thoroughly and completely humbled. As the cameras able to cut to commercial, the admirers began to applaud, but they weren't applauding both guests equally. The acclaim was clearly for Angelina, who had delivered a masterclass in adroitness beneath pressure, while advertisement, the axiological emptiness of performative activism. Meghan sat there, her altogether planned appearance, having backfired spectacularly, while Angelina accustomed the acclaim with the aforementioned quiet abode. She'd maintained throughout the absolute devastating exchange. In beneath than 30 minutes, one of Hollywood's best admired figures had actually dismantled one of the world's best affected self-promoters, all while never adopting her articulation or abandoning her principles. It was a moment that would be replayed countless times, analyzed endlessly, and remembered as the day accurate service triumphed over bogus victimhood on a live television. So, what did you think of this absurd affectation of grace beneath pressure? Did Angelina Jolie handle this bearings perfectly, or should she accept been added diplomatic? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and accomplish abiding to subscribe for more behind-the-scenes belief that reveal what actually happens aback the cameras are rolling.